Good evening, and if you're just tuning in, thank you so much for joining us. You are watching or listening to the Angel Rock. I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. Just before I do a bit of an intro, I want to remind you guys all to come over to the UFO Paranormal Network YouTube channel. I keep an eye on the chat there. I'd like to make you part of the show if you've got questions or comments. A little bit about my show and myself. I'm a Canadian psychic medium. I'm a crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, spiritual teacher, and mentor, and I'm also a registered nurse. And my show, I say I cover all aspects of the supernatural, anything from UFOs to the paranormal to near death experiences, energy work, healing. And the guests that I have on always have really interesting information or experiences to share that can help other people in the world. And tonight is no different. I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro and then I'll introduce him. His name is George Lunsford, and he's done many jobs from being a maintenance man to making explosives for the government. I need to hear more about that. And he says he's also an actor for many years, doing indie feature films, commercials, book trailers, public service videos, and even a music video for the Steep Canyon Rangers called Long Shot. And he's also had near death experiences, he's had paranormal experiences, he has been in the Bermuda Triangle, UFO experiences. So we got a lot to talk about tonight. Welcome, George. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well,
Glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you. This is the first time we've talked, but I have lots of guests like this, and I always tell them it's just a conversation. So, you know what I'm going to ask you, because I didn't want, you've got quite an extensive biography, and I don't like to, read too long and keep you waiting, but it sounds like your paranormal experiences started when you were little.
Not little. I was younger. I was in
Okay.
my, I don't know, my late teens.
You are right, actually, early 20s. You said, you said a near-death experience first. Well, how about we try that then? You said early 20s, you had a near-death experience from pneumonia. And I'm just going to share with you,
I did.
I've studied near-death experiences for 40 years. So I'm very privileged and honored to hear if you're open to it, sharing exactly what happened.
Sure, no problem at all. I was, I don't go to the hospital. I don't go to the doctor unless I have to. And I had
Mhm.
reached a temperature. Well, I went to the doctor once and it said that it was bronchitis before they actually checked. And about 3 days later, I had 104 fever and
Mhm.
was almost totally lethargic
Mhm.
when they forced me to go to the emergency room. When I
Right.
got there, they freaked out
Mhm.
because only half my lungs were working because the rest of it was filled with fluid.
Oh, wow.
They
Mhm.
got me, they rushed me in, they did what they needed to do, and they finally got me up to a room. And it was probably that night. Yeah, I think it's that's that. Uh, I was in a room and I was sleeping.
Mhm.
And next thing I know, there was a woman standing in my room.
Ooh.
So I sat up, and it was this older woman, and she was standing there, and people started coming through the walls.
Mhm.
And I looked over, and I got up, I looked over, and my body was still in the bed.
I was wondering if you're going to say
And I
that
was
part.
standing,
Okay. Mhm.
and I didn't know what to think. I wasn't scared. I was just confused.
Okay.
And the older lady kept telling me, "It's okay. Nothing's wrong. You've crossed over for a minute."
Mhm.
And I said, "What do you mean crossed over?" She said, "Well, you're not really alive right now." And the clock on the wall, I looked at it, and the second hand wasn't moving. It was just stopped. Everything in the room would stop.
Wow. Mhm.
And people kept coming through the walls. And
Mhm.
I was being introduced to each of these people as they come in. And over in the corner of the room, in a kind of a darker area of the room, there was a figure standing there. And I could see a body and an outline of looked like folded up wings.
Okay.
And he raised his hand, and this little white dot showed up, and it just expanded the size of the wall.
Mhm.
And the people started walking into it one at a
Interesting.
time, telling me bye and walking into it.
Mhm.
So I thought it was just me and the older lady there and the angel. And I went to walk through and she said, no, honey, no. It's not time. You lay back down.
Mm-hmm.
So I went over and sat down on the bed. And right as I was laying down, she walked through and the angel dropped his hand and gone. And I all of a sudden woke up and people running in my room and the alarm was going off and everything was moving again.
That is fascinating. And I feel very privileged to hear your story, because you hear a lot of people that don't believe in near death experiences. People always have the same experience, and it's, floating on the ceiling, and then they go through a tunnel, and that's not true. I have heard so many different experiences,
Mm-hmm.
such as yours. Um, how did you feel about the angel that was there? Because I know you mentioned as the angel of death. Now, I know him as Archangel Azrael. How did you feel when you saw the angel? He obviously opened like a portal, it looks like, of light to cross over.
Right. And I didn't really feel, I wasn't scared. I was comforted. I felt comfortable and just, nothing bothered me. I had no worries at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I guess it was as all in his eyes,
Mm-hmm.
but it was very comforting. And I mean, there was nothing bad about the experience. What freaked everybody out was the nurses. They were all standing there and they were shocked when they come in and was talking and the alarm stopped. But what really freaked them out when I started naming the people.
You heard a name in, sorry?
Because each one of the people, huh?
Sorry,
I named all the people that come to my room.
I think we have a little bit of a delay. So if I accidentally speak over you, I apologize. But okay, so you started naming the people that came through that you had seen. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. It freaked the nurses out,
And
really?
I didn't know what to think. I was talking about the little old lady that was in there because she had died 2 days before I got there in the room I was in.
So how did you know this? See, now I'm going to share something with you. As a nurse, I'm not able to work now because of a back injury on the active floors. Okay. But I specifically chose my career to get a lot of experience in different areas. So the floor I was on was a cardiac step down unit. It was also surgical. It was also chemotherapy, palliative care. Like, we had everything on this floor. So I feel so
Mm-hmm.
privileged that I had many patients who had been resuscitated, had actually died, and you knew they were telling the truth because they were telling you who was in the room, what they looked like. You knew they had no
Mm-hmm.
medical knowledge, and they were repeating some of the stuff. And, you'll hear people say, well, you can still hear when you're unconscious, which is true when you're in a coma. But how did they know what the nurses look like? Or, we would have people from the ICU come up we would call it calling a
Mm-hmm.
code. So I had many people sharing that. I'm actually writing a book about this, about nurses'
Oh, that's cool.
experiences, of what we see and what we experience as patients, as I call it, go back home. So I love your experience. So did you find, after having this experience, were you able to share it openly, or were you a little afraid?
Oh, no, I'm crazy. I share it. I didn't care.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. Did you find, okay, some people find after a near death experience that they have some abilities unlocked that they may not have been aware of before the experience?
Yeah, I see things that a lot of people don't see, and I
Mhm.
hear things that a lot of people don't hear.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. And I actually resonate with your story a bit, because when I was a toddler, I wasn't even quite 3 years old. I had a fever of 106, and I kept seizuring. And my parents would have brought me into the emerge, and I wasn't seizuring anymore, and they wouldn't believe them. The third time they brought me in, um, and this is really strange. I've never ran into anybody that this has happened to. My mom said I had a head full of ringlets, and I seized right in the emergency room. They rushed me in the back room, and they wouldn't let my parents come back for a couple of hours. And I think I had a near-death experience. Apparently, I was in the hospital for about 2 weeks after, but my mom said the next day my hair went completely straight. No idea why.
Oh, that's wild. Well, mine
I
went away, so
Mhm. But you're not the first person. That's why I asked you about the gifts, because I don't know if you've heard the story of Dr. Eben Alexander.
No.
Okay, he was a pretty well-known neurologist in the US, complete atheist, thought that this was absolute BS about near-death experiences. He was all business, science, science, science. And apparently he got meningitis and went into a coma very quickly. And actually, he died numerous times while he was in the coma. He now doesn't even work as a doctor anymore. He goes around lecturing all around the world about his experience and what he saw, and talk about making a believer out of somebody that was an atheist. It was powerful.
It'll do it. It will. That's for sure.
Hmm. I got to ask you, because like I said, we never got to talk before this. And sometimes I like to do that because when I get someone's bio, there's so many questions to ask. How did you get into acting?
I decided I wanted to be an actor, and I started working on doing it, and I did it for 15 years.
Mhm.
Just on the side, though. I never made it a career. I just did it as like on weekends, or if I got a big, like I say, a gig in Atlanta, I'd take a few days off and go to Atlanta and do the acting job.
So are you in it? No, you're in North Carolina, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh, no, the reason
I'm
I
in the
asked,
mountains.
okay, the reason why I asked is one of my very close friends lives in Atlanta, and we work on a lot of stuff together because we're both in the kind of the same field. So
Oh,
let's
that's
go
cool.
back to your paranormal. And I apologize, I did read it and I have it in front of me. So this sounds like the near-death experience happened in your early 20s, but you started having paranormal experiences like when you were in your teens, you believe?
Yeah. My great grandmother, I was real close to my great grandmother.
Hmm.
And uh, I don't exactly remember when she died, to be honest with you. It's probably a bad thing. But
That's
I
okay.
was laying in my bed asleep one night,
Hmm.
and I felt something. So I opened my eyes and looked. My great grandmother was sitting on the end of my bed.
Hmm.
And everyone has your nose will connect different scents with different people.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
that's what made me know it was my grandmother before I ever opened my eyes, my great grandmother before I opened my eyes,
Hmm.
because it was the soap she used or something. I could smell it.
Hmm.
And I looked at her. She was sitting there, and she just told me that she wanted to tell me goodbye and that she loved me, and that she was going.
Okay. I don't know if you froze up there, my
Once
friend. Or
again,
okay.
kind of scared. Are we good?
I think we're good now. I think we're going to just have that problem tonight. That's okay. Sorry. Could you repeat that, please? I'm sorry.
Sure. Uh, when she showed up to tell me goodbye and that she loved me, and it wasn't nothing scary. It was
Hmm.
just a comforting feeling. And I woke
Right.
up the next morning, and that day we found out she had passed away that night.
Aw. So it sounds like you had a positive paranormal experience then.
Mostly.
Yeah, I can't say the same for myself. And it seems like most of us that are kind of in this field, we're actually on the TV show Paranormal Survivor. And I'm writing
Oh,
three
cool.
books. One is about autism and our journey. My son has severe autism, and then our paranormal experience. And it is a crazy story. And it's not just us who experienced what happened in that home. And then,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, the one about the nurses. But speaking of books, you've got your book, and let me make sure I get the title right: Legends, Myth, Monsters, and Ghost. Right?
Yep. There's four of them.
Okay. Tell us all about it. Why
Oh,
did you?
okay. I just growing up in the mountains,
Mhm.
you're handed down stories from from the grandparents down to the parents and then the kids and all that. And we seem to be losing that.
Okay, you're
So
right.
I wanted to I wanted to be able to put out books that people could read stories about their states.
Okay.
Like down in South Carolina, for instance, you have there's a ghost dog. You got the boo hag, and you've got different ones down there. And I wanted to make sure I passed these stories along to other people. Now there's tons of them per state. I only did like 5 per state, but I
Okay. Hang
also
on.
included.
Okay.
Okay,
Just
go
give
ahead.
me one sec. Just one sec. Michelle, I see you
Sure.
over on Facebook. If you can run over to the UFO Paranormal Network channel on YouTube, then I can see your comments and be able to respond to you. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop you there, George. Okay, now you
Oh
got me.
no,
What did
you're
you
fine.
say? A boo hag?
Yeah, they got the Gullas down in Charleston. They come from West Africa during the slave period, and they stayed and all gathered down in around Charleston area. Well, they
Okay.
have a legend called a boo hag. A boo hag is demonic spirit
Mhm.
that wears human for clothing, human skin,
Okay.
and at night it'll shed the human skin and leave out and try to find someone sleeping. And what it does, it comes into the room and it sits on your chest and pulls out your life force a little at a time.
Sounds like a
And then
cross
it goes,
between a shapeshifter and a succubus, or I forget what the male
kind
version
of,
is. Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
yeah. But the cool thing about the boo hag, if you put salt around your bed, it can't bother you. If you have indigo paint around your windows or any opening of their house, it can't cross the indigo paint. And if the boo hag does get in, you can put up a broom. And the boo hag must be very neurotic because it has to count every single strand of a broom.
Okay.
And, and if it doesn't make it back to its fake body by daylight,
Yeah.
it disintegrates.
I think I'd be getting the biggest, fluffiest, thin thing broom there was. Because this reminds me of my favorite show that just ended. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I love the show Supernatural
Oh, yeah.
because they base a lot of their stories on when you look up these creatures and stuff, there's actually legend and lore about them.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think I've ever heard of a boo hag before. That's really interesting. Have you got some more? I want to hear some more about these
Oh, I've
characters
got
that we
tons and tons and tons of them.
Mhm.
I'm trying to the 4th book, which is the western part of the United States, from New Mexico all the way up to Montana and everything west.
Right?
Uh, it's hopefully it's going to be out soon. We're having
Oh,
some issues with Ingram about getting a release date because they hadn't had enough people working to be able to release the book in time.
I
So
got
we're still fighting with that. But
Mhm.
that book is interesting because I always do a section about the Indians, Native Americans,
Absolutely.
uh, and the first chapter is the Inuit people in that
Mhm.
book, and that's the ones up in Alaska and the Arctic and all that.
Mhm.
But I threw in 7 stories from overseas, one from England, one from Spain,
Okay.
Vietnam, stuff like that.
Wow. Because my partner Dell has a show on Tuesday nights now, but it used to be just before my show, but I introduced him to one of my guests, Farla Ventura, and she writes about werewolves and mermaids and vampires, fairies, and she shares stories. That's what made me think about this, but it's mostly, especially when it comes to fairies and trolls and things like that, it's from Celtic lore because that's sort of
Hmm.
the where she feels they've originated and where her family roots are. So
Oh
can you
yeah.
give us a hint? Any characters from overseas that you found particularly interesting at all?
Well, I only did one per country, so
Mhm.
I did like the Legend of George and the Dragon, which was actually based off of a real event.
Okay.
I did the Banshee
Yeah.
up in
Okay.
Ireland.
Mhm.
I did the Rock Apes in Vietnam.
I don't think I've heard of those. What are those? Like you got to let us
Oh yeah,
know.
they're Bigfoot-like creatures in
I
Vietnam.
figured.
They
Okay.
call them rock apes.
Hmm.
And the soldiers, when they were over there fighting during the war,
Hmm.
were attacked by them.
I heard that before.
Yep.
I did. Yeah. And nobody would believe them, right? I remember this
Right.
story. I don't know who was telling me it or I was reading it. And they thought they had gotten into the opium or something over there. I remember reading, I don't know if you found that, but that was what I remember it was somebody
I, I
telling
didn't
me.
put that in the book, but I had heard that before.
You did too. Okay. So I know then I've heard the right source. Banshees, those are kind of scary. You wouldn't want to hear a banshee cry, would you?
Oh no!
I will tell you, I never ever thought that I would have a conversation with Dell about fairies because I was always the one that did the research for paranormal stuff. And then he was
Mhm.
more, I like it, truth seeking than conspiracy theory. But he slowly is getting more into the paranormal. And when you mentioned about the Inuit, well, where I live, I'm about 6 hours north of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm actually about 35 minutes away from the Minnesota border. So
Mhm.
we have a strong Aboriginal or First Nations history, especially where we live. And we've got two main landmarks we're known for. My city is called Thunder Bay. And there
Mhm.
is a giant, it looks like a mountain of a giant laying down sleeping. If you see it, it's called the Sleeping Giant, and it's called the Legend of Nana Bijou. And then we have it's called Kekabeka Falls, but the nickname is the Little Niagara of the North, and they're intertwined, and it's quite a story. But I love that
I
you've done
bet.
this with your books because I say this so many times. Like you said, we're losing the art of storytelling. Plus, these are important information that's being carried down from generation to generation. And this way, you're not going to lose it, right? You've taken the time to document it. And you said this is your fourth book?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Is
I
there,
broke the United States up into four groups. I had
okay.
the South first, then I did
Mhm.
the North, and then I did the Midwest, and then the West.
I love that. No, have you got any? You don't even have to bring them up in your upcoming books. We want people to go check out your books you've got published because I looked your books up. I
Mhm.
saw them on Amazon and I was going to ask you because I think it said volume three. And I was going to say volume three. So, what have you found particularly interesting, like across the U.S.? Like, has there been anything really unusual or?
Oh, there's some doozies. There
That's
really
what I
are. There's
thought
some
you're
really
going to tell
great
us.
stories. Oh, well, of course, there's Bigfoot in every state.
Hmm.
There is a Bigfoot creature. Of course, that's in every country too,
Yeah.
around the world, which I've studied quite a bit about it. Because
Mhm.
I have my own theory about Bigfoot, but we won't get into that right now.
I would listen. I'm
Uh,
going to let my cat out because she won't stop meowing. Give me one sec. Keep talking. I can hear you. I'm two
all right.
minutes. Go ahead. Okay.
There's so many good stories. There's like Skinwalker Ranch in Utah.
Oh, yeah, please.
I'll,
I know
I'll,
about it, but I'd love to hear your
there,
take on it.
there's just so much information on it. It
Mhm.
started with a curse, and then the curse is it turned in there's UFOs. They believe there's a buried UFO underground. Beautiful
Mhm.
dog.
Thank you.
And
She's a brat. Everybody knows her. This is Ember. Oh,
way
and
my boxer was.
you just pulled this over. Sorry. Go ahead. Okay. So, what do you believe is at Skinwalker Ranch?
I don't. I believe that there may be an underground base
Okay.
that would explain almost everything, including the
Okay.
paranormal stuff. But I
Okay.
don't. Uh,
When you say
it's
base, do you
just
mean
there's so
UFO?
much,
I'm so sorry.
huh?
When you say base, do you mean UFO or like
Yeah,
a military base or?
no UFO base
Okay.
deep underground.
Hmm.
I think it is, but I mean that would explain your electromagnetic, the lasers, the UFOs, the paranormal stuff that they're seeing.
Hmm.
Because if there is a UFO there, they would be able to uh, link between the different worlds.
Hmm.
What am I trying to say?
Like they
I
can
can't. I think
travel through
I've lost it.
dimensions? Like, are you talking about traveling through dimensions or creating
Yeah, they'll be able to
portals?
open up dimensional doors and portals and stuff.
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, traveling through space, if they can do that, they're a lot farther advanced than we are.
Oh, they're way advanced. I mean, we just talked about UFOs on our paranormal host chat. We have an hour between the host chat and then my show because we have the
Hmm.
Horsefly Chronicles, their show on there. But okay, then I'm going to ask you this, not to get a little bit off track here, but I want to hear your thoughts. I want to know more about you. So, what do you think about the military, or not the military, sorry, the US, I guess the government, it's not the military, I apologize. The government saying that they're going to be doing full disclosure in the next almost week. What do you think? How much do you think they're going to show us?
I don't know if we'll ever get full exposure from them. They're just that's the way the military is. I dealt with. I was in there and I dealt with what they did. They'll never disclose everything, but
Hmm.
they didn't have a choice after the Tic Tac videos got out. I mean, they were pretty much stuck then. They had to
Hmm.
admit that we have been dealing with this stuff for a while,
Hmm. Yeah, but
and
didn't you
there
notice
there was
nobody
nothing they could
cared?
do.
Nobody cared when they made that announcement.
Well,
And
it wasn't that nobody cared; it was that they controlled the media.
mhm,
Once the media don't, lets everybody just kind of let go behind them, everybody forgets about it. People have
mhm,
short memories.
they do. Mhm. I have a friend that's been on, because Joe, who you met, Joe Montaldo, I'm going to give him a shout out, everybody. He's the owner of UPRN. He does all the hard work for me so I can just sit and talk with my guests. So thank you, Joe. He has many shows on the network, and one of them is UFO Undercover. So this is a friend of mine, Michael Roser, and he works with Third Phase of Moon as well, besides his own podcast, I think it's Dark Hour Paranormal. And Joe met him, so Joe had him on his show. So when we supposedly, I think it was from one of the alphabet soup organizations, I want to say CIA, I believe it was, when they said they disclosed everything they had. There was no video, there was no photos, and pretty well everything was redacted. So I asked Michael, I messaged him and go, okay, what's the skinny on this? What do you know about this? And he said, I think they just gave us enough to stop us from bugging them. But what do you think?
That's exactly what they did.
Mm-hmm.
That's the military. The
Mm-hmm.
military and the government are so tight-lipped on this. I don't know what. I mean, I can see why they keep it to themselves and not let a lot of it out because we've seen with this COVID, people are insane.
Mm-hmm.
They bought up. I mean, they went crazy with this short gas shortage we had. They went crazy with the COVID. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, imagine if an alien ship pulls up in your people's yard, they're really going to go crazy.
You know what? I wouldn't have believed it before because we're on YouTube. Let's just call it the situation, so that we don't get a strike here. But I
Okay, I'm
believe
sorry.
it's not your fault. I didn't get a chance to tell you before, and if we talk about it a lot, it just won't go on YouTube. I know Joe will put it. We've got lots of other platforms where we're on. Um, so I just wanted to remind you. That's all. But what with the situation, if had you asked me before this, I would have said everybody knows about these things. Like it's no big surprise, but I have to agree with you. I never ever thought I would ever be living in a time like this where so much has been hidden and so many people believe it. Like they just believe it. If they had, and look at how crazy they went. So can you imagine?
Oh
You're
yeah.
right. Mhm.
Well, I think the whole UFO thing and with the Bigfoot thing too.
Mhm.
Uh, People are if they don't know that it exists, they're not positive about it. There's nothing to back up it. As
Mhm.
far as they know, there's nothing to
Mhm.
back it up. Then it's easy for them to forget about it and not pay
Mhm.
attention if it's not in their everyday lives.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what we
I think.
call people. We say to people that it's not in somebody's human nature to have it in their bubble, if you will. If it's not part of their life or
Mhm.
their world, it kind of just gets pushed to the side and it's like, oh yeah, that's there. And you don't find out about it. You don't research it. You don't find out any information about it. And a lot of people, because they've never had, I believe, a paranormal experience, a UFO experience, an ET experience, it doesn't exist. What's your experience
Exactly.
with that? Yeah.
Oh, I agree 100% with you.
Hmm.
I really do. I've been around and seen so much in my 54 years that there's not too much that I doubt anymore.
Me too.
Because I mean, let's be, let's be honest about it.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, you and I are almost the same age. I'll be 50, well, I'll be 56 in August. I'm 55. And what I say now, I get people contacting me all the time, as I'm sure you may do too, and they'll say, I need to talk to someone about this, and it's really weird. You're going to think I'm crazy. I always say, try me. Because there's nothing that's too weird.
Oh no, no, there's nothing that can be said that it would surprise me anymore.
Yeah, but once you experience these things, like I've never had anybody on my show before. You mentioned you've had some experiences with the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh yeah,
I would love to hear if you're open to sharing.
sure, no problem.
Mhm.
We, I was on Charleston is where my ship was out of. I was Charleston, South Carolina,
Yeah.
back when there was a base there. There's not a base there anymore, but my ship was out of there, and that's right, real close to the Bermuda Triangle anyway.
Hmm.
And we used to go through there all the time.
Hmm.
One particular time that really stood out to me is I was on the aft lookout, which is on the back part of the ship,
Yeah.
and it was a beautiful day, beautiful, beautiful day.
Hmm.
The water was just as smooth as the floor, and
Hmm.
the sun was out. It was just bright. There was no clouds.
Hmm.
But we got to noticing up way up in front of the ship, close to the horizon, you could see a little gray spot.
Okay.
As we got closer to it, the gray got bigger and bigger and bigger. When we got up to where the gray was, it was like a giant gray wall, as high as you could see and as far on as you could see on both ends. Well,
Wow.
as the ship went into that fog, our compasses and electronics all went haywire. All the power died. As each part of the ship come in, the power would die, and
Wow.
the compasses would spin.
Uh-huh.
And as we come out the other side, it would come back on, and the compasses would straighten out.
What do you think it
And
was?
well, that part had to be magnetic. It had to be some type of magnetic disturbance.
Hmm.
But when we come out the other side of it, I was on aft lookout. Like I said, we come out, the water got real choppy. The skies were just this hazy look to it. And as I look back, there was no more gray wall. It was gone.
Oh my gosh. Are you serious?
Oh yeah.
So, okay, so what's your theory then on the Bermuda Triangle? Because there's so many people that have unexplainable experiences like you're sharing right here. What do you think is causing all this?
I don't think there's one single cause. I think it is a multitude of causes. I mean, it could be magnetic disturbances. It could be there's just pop up storms. There's so many different things it could be, but I don't think you'll be able to categorize it into one single cause
Okay.
because there's so many different. I mean, we found an F-14 tail fin that was sitting in the water perfectly for us to find, and it looked like it had been laser cut. There was no edge to it. It was
Ah,
perfect. And there was no barnacles on it, but it had disappeared like years before we found it, and it looked like it had been set there for us to find.
wow. What else?
Uh, just magnetic disturbances and stuff. Other than that, I mean, that can happen anywhere, though.
No, but there's what you just
It's
described.
concentrated there.
Mhm. Because to me, what I've always wondered and I've always thought is if there was an underwater base or something else deep underground, like on the ocean floor that we're not aware of, because there has to be something that's causing the magnetic
Hmm.
disturbances. Or like, how do you see a gray wall that you enter? Everything shuts off the power. Again, magnetic force, maybe. But when you come out on the other side, the weather's completely different, the water's different, and you don't see the gray wall anymore.
It was weird. That's all I can say.
Wow. See, now where we are, Where I always say with the Great Lakes, I don't know if you've seen them before. Some of them are in the U.S., the northern U.S. states, and then
Oh yeah.
Lake. Okay, so some people I've talked to in the U.S. are aware of them. Some people aren't. So we're right on Lake Superior, the biggest lake, and I always say we'd be like where the eye is if you're almost looking at it like
Mhm.
a wolf's head. Now, I could never stand this Canadian singer, but it's a song that came out in the 70s with Gordon Lightfoot,
Uh
and it
huh.
was called The Legend of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's been many stories that have come out about that in the middle of Lake Superior. There's something strange going on. It's almost like another type of Bermuda Triangle. And I've heard this from many, many, many people.
Well, they've got a triangle in Alaska that has the same thing, but it's all based on land.
Oh, I got to hear this.
Oh, you never heard of the Alaskan Triangle?
No.
They've got a recorded testimony about Bigfoot in there. They've got airplanes that disappeared in it. They have had people disappear in it. They have found parts of people that had disappeared in it. Uh, Supposedly, this curse that's on that part of the Alaska, that triangle, there's a creature called an otter man,
Hmm.
and he is supposed to be extremely aggressive. And the Bigfoot in that area are supposed to be extremely aggressive, along with all the different types of other issues they have up there.
So let's
it's
talk
it's
about,
interesting.
go ahead.
No, you're good. That's good.
Like I said, we've got a delay. So if I accidentally talk over you, it's me being way up in Canada and you probably being in the mountains. So we'll work with it. I wanted
Oh
to
yeah.
ask, you said you had a lot and some thoughts on Bigfoot. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, my theory on Bigfoot: when the Indians come over from the
Mhm.
Asia area, they come
Yeah.
across the land bridge. When they come over, they are recorded. They've recorded it. It's all part of their history that they come across to what they call the white giants. They come
Okay.
across them out west, and they come across them on the east of the Mississippi.
Mhm.
And these white giants were cannibals. So, and the Indians were smaller than they were, but there were so many more of the Indians than there were the white giants. They finally ended up attacking the white giants and either killing them or driving them off.
Okay.
My thoughts are that they when they drove them off, they regressed into the like there's called a Mammoth Cave. It's a huge cave system up in West Virginia that runs for hundreds and hundreds of miles underground everywhere.
Okay.
I believe that the giants regressed into these caves, and instead of what you say evolving, they devolved a little bit. And since they had no clothing, their bodies grew more hair because if we go out in the woods, we grow more hair just like we
Absolutely.
were back in the old days. And I think if you look at the time periods when they talk about the white giants and then when they talk about the wild man,
Yeah.
there's several hundred years in between there that would account for that de-evolve. And they would have shrunk down to being, instead of 12 to 15 foot tall, they'd have been down to 7 to 9.
That's interesting. I'll share with you. Like you heard me talking about before we came on about Paul Anthony Wallace. He's got 5D TV on YouTube. He's been on Ancient Aliens Alive. He's a really interesting guy. He was he's actually even lived in Canada. He's from the UK and he lives now in Australia. And he used to be a preacher for many, many, many years. And then he started getting into a lot of the ancient texts and scrolls. And that's what he's been
Mm-hmm.
writing about. And this is a theory that I actually strongly consider. And I always say none of us are ever going to know the answer until we cross over ourselves. You want to call it going back home, whatever you want to call it, right?
Right.
But it made sense to me, and this is why. He has a theory about Bigfoot, and what he believes is that if you subscribe to that aliens once owned this planet and we were just slave people, that they were trying to create a slave type of race. So what they did was he possibly believes through all the ancient scrolls and texts that he's done, and he would do this much better justice than me, is that they did create if you will, a human being 1.0, but we were much higher functioning, too smart, had a lot of gifts, and they realized that these people aren't going to want to be subservient to us. So it's almost
Mhm.
like they devolved the human race. And part of why he believes this is, and he says he thinks that they even tried mixing us with a simian or ape type race or the apes, and that's
Mhm.
possibly where Bigfoot comes from. But the reason what makes him think this, and I can't refute it, why I would even consider what he's saying, is that he says you'll see when somebody's had, say, a severe head injury or a coma or a near death experience, it's almost like extra abilities get switched on. So if they get
Mhm.
switched on, they have to be there. It's just unlocking that key, right?
Mhm.
It's a theory. Like I say, I find yours quite interesting too, because to me, everybody in the world seems to have some kind of legend, whether it's the Yeti, the skunk ape, Sasquatch
Right.
slash Bigfoot. So how are we getting all these different, types of these giant, whatever you want to call them? But I do have a question for you too. So
Okay.
if we're the giant white people, what about this theory about the Nephilim, breeding with human women?
Oh yeah.
And they are finding skulls. They are finding complete skeletons of giants. And then
Mhm.
especially my moderator on my group in Facebook actually lives in Sardinia, Italy. And she said, "Yeah, I think I heard something about this." I said, "You live there. You should be checking this out." And we watched a couple documentaries where people had a lot of evidence, like giant teeth, giant femur
Oh yeah.
bones, and the government takes it away right away.
Yep.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So do you think there was the part they played as well, or?
I think they're all part of the same, all different parts of the same tribe. The Nephilim were the children of the fallen angels,
Yes. Hmm. Hmm.
and there's no reason why they would just be in. Because at one time, all the land masses were together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if they were all in this here together and it broke apart, then they're automatically going to be in different areas. It
Absolutely.
to me, it just makes more sense. It just they were here. We know there were giants here. We have recordings from all over the world
Hmm.
and ancient writings. There's giants mentioned in almost every one of them. Just
Absolutely.
like everybody said, everybody talks about a unicorn. Unicorn now we think of a unicorn as a big fancy horse with a thing and a mane and all this. But if you look in the Bible when it talks about a unicorn, it mentions it being the size of an ass with a horn.
Hmm.
So it's like a donkey. And
Hmm.
we know for a fact that there are unicorn sheep. They have a
Really?
single horn going on top of their head. Yep.
Really? So where
Yep.
would
When
they
you get
be
off here,
located?
look it up.
Oh, no, I believe you, but where would they be located?
That I don't remember.
Mhm.
I have a short memory. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. I'm loving this conversation. This is like right up my alley talking about this kind of stuff. And I am going to look at, because I love unicorns. I've loved them since I was little. But, like
Well,
Joe, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I'm going to build on that here in a minute.
Okay, well, I was going now. I almost forget what I was going to say now. Oh no, Joe actually is a member, and I believe was one of the founding members of the International Center for Alien Research. They've been doing a 20+ year study on where did RH negative factor, red hair and green eyes, come from, because 20,000 years ago that did not exist in our genetic genome DNA makeup. So where did it come from?
Well,
Right.
that's true.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's got me on that one.
What were you going to add when I so rudely interrupted you? I'm
Oh
sorry.
no, you're fine. No, you're fine. I forgot now.
That's the thing I love when I told you when I do my show, we just have a conversation because like this is about your work. But what I've been dying to ask you is, okay, so you broke the states up into all these different regions. Did
Yep.
you have to travel to each one of these states, like to speak to people, or like how did you do your research?
Unfortunately, I just did it online.
That's okay.
Uh, I hate to do that way, but when I work a full time job and everything else, it's hard to go.
Hmm.
A lot like the ones in South Carolina, I knew most of those because I spent half my life in South Carolina.
Right.
My wife is in New Orleans, so the stories in Louisiana I got from her and other people.
That's where we're broadcasting out of, is New Orleans, Louisiana. That's where we broadcast through his studio, and that's where he is on the Gulf Coast.
I can't say anything bad. I kind of like her, so I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. I
she's a
like
good
Joe
lady.
too, so I can't say anything bad.
But New Orleans, down around New Orleans, they have the best stories,
I
except for one.
know. Guess what? Joe will tell us about stuff, or just so many things. And like he says, you do not want to be out in the bayou. He said in the middle of the night. And he talks about this pink gas and all these things. As your wife
Hmm.
told you some of those stories?
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. Have
Hmm.
you ever read the whole story about Marie Laveau, the real Marie Laveau?
I just know because there's somebody I know that has a lot of her original stuff, Marie Laveau's. I know a little bit, and from what Joe has shared, but I would love to hear what you've got to share.
Just went from being a slave to being one of the most renowned women in the world
Yes. Hmm.
because of her abilities.
Hmm.
And if you read the whole story about her, it's really a great story to read. And it
Oh,
doesn't
really?
really get into the voodoo much, but it tells about her doing fortune telling and like that. And then when she finally met her that she married, they just kind of drifted off and did the family thing. But she's an
Interesting.
interesting character.
Hmm. And when you say interesting, because our listeners might not know who Marie Laveau is, because we go out to quite a few countries worldwide. So do you mind sharing with our listeners or viewers who Marie Laveau is?
She was the voodoo queen
Hmm.
in New Orleans.
Hmm.
She did all kinds of fortune telling and reading and stuff for some of the biggest people in the world. They would come from Europe, they would come from everywhere around the world to come to have her read their fortunes.
Hmm.
And they say if you go to her where she's buried at, one, that if you leave her either brown liquor or money or something else, that you can ask one favor and she'll grant it.
Really?
Yep.
Because I know that this person, he used to be on the network. He's shown me some of his things he has of hers because he collects haunted items. And he's shared some
Ooh.
stories about odd things that have happened with these items. And even Seraphine Hurley, who's been on this network, is a friend of mine. She collects haunted items, and when we've done shows together, she has, when she's on camera, she has, because she has a crucifix from an exorcism, and it has moved. It's had all kinds of stuff. There's a doll in the background in particular. She has a lot of haunted dolls, and the face is painted on. I swear to God to you, there are videos you can see where that doll looks like it's blinking and it
Oh, I believe
smiles
it.
and moves, all kinds of stuff. Hmm.
I did research from on one of the books is Annabelle,
Oh, let's hear
and
about
from what I
that.
read about, Annabelle it was a Raggedy Ann doll. It's about 3 foot tall,
Hmm.
and the mother had bought it to give to her daughter who had graduated nursing school.
Hmm. Donna.
And yep, Donna. And this doll is, I won't tell you the whole story, but I'll say it's not a nice doll.
Oh, I know the story very, very
Any
well, but it's crazy.
Well, what got me is when the priest was going to take, or was it Mr. Warren? I don't remember now. Put the doll in the back of the car and was taking it to the Warrens,
Hmm.
and he crashed.
I know.
And
I know.
yeah,
He didn't believe it. I think it wasn't Mr. Warren. I think it was the priest, and
I may have been a
he was
priest.
very sarcastic and very disrespectful about the doll because he died in that
Mhm.
crash, didn't he? Yep. Hmm.
I
And the
think so.
reason I brought
Yeah.
on a motorcycle that came in there, a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and he was very disrespectful and taunting it, and he also crashed and died. Hmm.
You don't mess with the cursed items. I've done several on my podcast, which I've
Hmm.
changed my podcast. But on my podcast, I did a whole show about cursed items.
Well, let's talk about
And
that.
who, anybody that messes with the cursed items are braver than me. That's all I can say, because there's been some just horrible, horrible things happen to these people with these
Hmm.
cursed items. My
Yeah.
favorite one will still always be Robert the Doll.
I don't know if I've
Still
heard,
my
I
favorite
might have heard
story.
of it, but would you mind sharing it?
Sure, Robert the Doll. It's actually they've got it in a glass case in a museum in Key West.
Okay.
And what it was, this real affluent family moved down to Key West, and they got a nanny and she was from Haitian,
Okay.
and she was to watch over their son.
Hmm.
And the mother saw her out there talking to the son, and she cut a little bit of hair off.
And she
And
what?
the mother she cut his hair off,
Okay.
and back in those days, they would make dolls out of different stuff, and they put human hair on the dolls,
Right. Yeah.
and they would give them to the little kids, and that's what they'd play with. Well, she
Hmm.
made this doll. Well, the mother seen her cut the hair, and she freaked out. She got crazy. She chewed her out and everything else, and then let her go back to doing her job. Well, when the dad got home, he really went off on her, and he fired her.
Hmm.
So her last gift to the little boy, Gene, was the doll.
Okay.
And she binded the doll to him, so the
Oh.
doll would never hurt him.
Hmm.
But if he wasn't with the doll, it was a problem. Well, he loved this thing, and he spent all his time with the doll. And they would go by his room, and they could hear him talking to the doll, but then they would hear another voice that wasn't Gene's.
Ooh. Hmm.
And as this kept happening, it happened, and the mother said no, and she took the doll away from him,
Hmm.
put it in a box, tied twine around it real good, and everything put up in the attic. Well, apparently Robert didn't like that. So at night, they could hear something running across in the attic, like a little boy's footsteps, and hear it laughing.
Hmm.
And the mother went up there, and the twine was all gone off the box. The box was open. The doll was sitting over in a corner. She thought Gene did it.
Hmm.
So he got in trouble. Well, finally, he reached the age, and this was an ongoing thing. He reached the age and moved out and went to art school in France.
Hmm.
And the doll basically drove the parents into madness. They had just lost their minds, and they were just extremely crazy. Well, the dad died, and when he died, his mother got a hold of Gene, and he come back home. But when he come home, he had got married,
Hmm.
and the mother sat there, and all she'd do is rock. She never would say anything. She just sat there and rocked. And the doll was in the front room, and the wife come through, and the mother grabbed her, and she said, "Stay away from the doll." That's all she said, and then she died. And the wife was eventually, everywhere Gene went, he took the doll with him.
Hmm.
And they had this house it's still down in Key West.
Right.
And it has on the corner, it has like a round area. And it's all glass at the top. And he would sit there and do artwork with Robert in his own little chair by the window. And he would talk back and forth, and the doll would talk to him. And when he died, they donated the doll to the museum. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. People, after he died, people would come by the house, and they would see the doll staring out the window at them.
Wow.
And then they'd turn their head and look back over, and it wouldn't be there anymore.
Oh.
And another family bought it, and the doll just terrorized them. And then they finally somebody donated the doll to the museum.
Hmm.
And they didn't believe it. They didn't believe
Yeah.
the whole thing. And the woman that donated told them, you have to respect Robert.
Hmm.
So they didn't think anything about it. They just took his pedestal and they stuck a little rocking chair in there. They stuck the doll in it, put a glass case on it, and sealed it. Well, the curator was there and he checked everything. Everything was good. And the cleaning woman come in and everybody left except for the cleaning woman. And then when she left, nobody else was there. They come back the next day. The doll case that Robert was in was open and set to the side.
Okay.
And they had little footprints that looked like it come from a doll that was all over the floors, like it'd run all over the museum. And the curator got mad. He thought that the cleaning lady was playing a trick on him.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, "Okay, I'm staying here tonight with her and make sure she don't do it again."
Yeah.
And they stayed with her, left. Everything was fine. Next morning, the same thing.
Wow. So what do they do with this doll now? Like, do they just give it free reign, or is it
Well,
bound, like, or anything? Or
it's still in the glass case, and if you go down to the museum, you have to ask Robert to take his picture. And if he
okay,
doesn't react, then you're allowed to take his picture. But
right.
they've got videos of him reacting to people. You can actually see him turn his head or his hand move or the chair start rocking inside that glass case.
Oh, dear Lord. Dear Lord.
One of my favorite stories.
It's so creepy, but I know it's true because, like I said,
It is.
Seraphine, and I asked her one time, I said, why do you do this? And it's actually a very noble reason why. She is an occult historian, a paranormal investigator. I consider myself, if you will, a light worker with a lot of knowledge by the paranormal. I always say it found me. I wasn't looking for it, but we kind of meet in the middle. And she said, because people are looking to get rid of these items, and rather than them ending up in the wrong hands and something being unleashed, she said,
Mm-hmm.
I know how to keep them and get them to play nice. And but she's had things happen to her. I know she has, because she sent me pictures. I remember one time, and I always tell people this: if trust your animals or little children, because I believe children can, especially young children, if your child's got an imaginary friend, you better find out a little bit more about that imaginary friend and what they're telling your child. And same as your animals, they can see. And there's a picture of her cat sitting on the couch just staring. And there's a couch across, and he was sitting right by her, almost like he was guarding her. And there's this mist across the top that got caught in the photo. And she didn't even notice this. I did. I blew up the picture. And you know how the couch has like I don't want to call it like trim, almost like round, but when it
Yeah.
meets where the leg is, there's like a hole. There was an
Mm-hmm.
eyeball in it.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, you
It's
should see some
creepy,
of
but
my pictures. Like my
I
down.
love to.
I will. Okay, I never did EVPs in the house, but I used to call into a friend's show that still has a great show Friday night, or sorry, Sunday nights on Facebook and YouTube. It's called Paranormal Soup. And so I called in to his show. There was he was having EVP night or ITC night, and it was the Halloween show. When you hear what comes through on this is not just class A EVPs. This is a whole discussion, calling people by name. You can
Wow.
tell they're on video, okay? And I think people think this is fake. I didn't know I was going to call in. I actually thought the show was almost over, and they ran a half hour over. And this voice, if it doesn't make every hair on the back of your neck stand up, there is still something that came through there. And there's a bunch of people in costumes and stuff, and you hear them all freaking out because we don't know what this thing said. I don't know what language it is. It's a completely, I can hear it in my head right. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps. And so the next year, I called in again because Jason Bland, who runs it and is the host, he was on the same network as me. So for Halloween in 2018, we had 84 hours of straight live radio with a network we used to be on called the Spookathon. So
Oh,
I
cool.
called in there. It called my partner by name. It said all kinds of things. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Dell's been thrown 15 feet across the kitchen in our old house.
Mm.
We've had so many things. I'm writing that, like I said, a book about this experience. And there's been other people that have had things happen that we didn't, yeah, like we didn't experiment. Just before I moved out, I finally got out of there. I lost everything. I didn't care. I gave it back to the bank. You take it. I'm not staying here anymore because like I try and tell people, when you're dealing with something with negative with the paranormal and you get human beings that think that they're so everlasting powerful with the ego, and I used to get people saying to me, you just send that thing down here, I'll just kick it right in the ass, right? And I'd say, you know what, you don't want to mess with something like this because it doesn't
No.
listen to you. I said, what it does is it goes after things you can't control, like your finances, your health, your children, your pets. It goes after things that it knows it will hurt you the most. And this all started, I kid you not, with a dream about 15 years ago that seems like it was 20 minutes ago. And there was a being in my tree. There was a tree in my yard at my old house. And there was a man sitting in the tree. And when I hurt my back as a nurse, I actually was in bed for a long time. I couldn't get out of bed, but I was doing things to keep busy and I was making pet accessories. And so when I
Mm-hmm.
could get up and go about, all the local shops kept asking me, no, we'd love to sell these things here. Like, and they didn't want a commission. And I was with my first husband at the time. And I remember saying to him, this is so crazy. Like, why do they not want a commission? Like, people are being so nice. And we had just watched that movie, The Secret, that had come out, right? So I remember my ex saying to me, well, maybe it's the law of attraction. That night, I had this dream I'm going to share with you. So I'm out in my front yard. There is a tree in my front yard. And as I look up, there's a man sitting there. And I always say I'm not a high maintenance type of girl, but you could tell he was wearing very expensive clothing, dark charcoal pinstripe suit, very crisp white shirt, black tie. He had this black hair slicked back to about here, neatly trimmed black goatee and mustache all in one piece. But it was his face. It was this sickly whitish green color. And as I looked to his eyes, they went from black to flame. And he said, hello, Lorilei. He said, you see that little business you've got? He said, that's nothing. I can give you fame. I can give you wealth. I can give you anything beyond your wildest dreams. All you have to do is agree to follow me. And I can't say on radio what I told him to do with that. And then and he just laughed at me. And then I said, who are you? He told me he was a demon, told me his name, which I'd never heard before, told me how to spell it. And again, I can't say it on radio what I told him to do, but basically on no uncertain terms was I following him and it needed to leave now. And then it laughed at me, waved his finger and went, oh, no, 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 no. Every time you see a crow or a raven, you'll know who it is. And I called on Archangel Michael in this dream. I had the most brilliant flash of royal blue, silver, and white. I woke up in a complete sweat, crying and shaking, and I'm not a crier. And that's when all hell broke loose in my house. I couldn't find this name. I had been raised Roman Catholic. So, plus, I work with the Archangelic realm. I've got many books. They've got fallen angels listed in there. Never found this name. About 10 years later, somebody contacted me with something quite dark about the paranormal. So I was looking something up. They had a name. There on the page was the exact name I had been given in that dream, the exact spelling, and its animal form is a crow.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty amazing.
I don't think
It
so.
really is.
I
Well,
was
no, I mean, you know,
go ahead.
now demons aren't anything to mess with. That I agree with you 1,000%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. And then there's so many things that happened with this story. And like I said, if it was just our family, you would think it was, that maybe we were a little bit off our rocker, but there's been other people, like people that were non-believers. Like we didn't even have anybody to our home. I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah. So I'd love to hear but you said you haven't had really any negative paranormal experiences, right? Just mostly positive?
Yeah. I actually had we we had a ghost in this house, which
Okay.
was funny because we bought a Ring doorbell.
Hmm.
Right, you get
Gotcha.
the video and all that
Hmm.
on it. And we were sitting here one night,
Hmm.
and our Ring doorbell went off,
Hmm.
and when there was nobody around,
Yeah.
so we pulled up the video to what it recorded.
Hmm.
Me and my wife was sitting here. We had it pulled up. We're looking at it, and the way our house set up, the door is back on the front porch, and then when you got a
Okay.
whole porch, then it goes down onto the steps,
Right.
and there's two bedrooms on that side. Well, this human-shaped fog come out of the middle room,
Hmm.
across the middle of the porch, stopped, looked at the Ring camera,
Hmm.
turned, and went right off the porch. This is straight line. And if you go straight line off my porch, you're going to fall about 3 feet. But it went straight line as far as the Ring would pick it up, and it disappeared. And we haven't had any more issues until her mom died.
Oh, when her mom died, did she visit you? Is that what you're saying, or?
So I think she's here constantly bugging me. She likes to harass me.
I'm laughing. People make
Yeah.
mother-in-law jokes.
she, my wife's a big Ozzy Osbourne fan.
Oh, right on.
And the other day, one of her figures was, she heard a bang, and the figure was across the room from where it was. And we don't know why. I had one of mine fell off, and it was on this part of the wall over here, but it was found it over here. I collect toys and stuff. I'm a
There's
big
nothing wrong with
kid,
that.
basically.
Nothing wrong with that.
And I thought, we think it was her mom. We really do. Because her mom, she was the trip anyway.
I always say to
And
people, how does it make you feel when there's activity going around? Because you know if there's something negative, you're going to feel it. So what do you feel? Like you
oh
really
yeah,
believe her? Hmm.
oh yeah, I think it is. Of course, it could just be us wanting her to be here too. So, but my
Hmm.
wife is she's Cherokee too.
Okay.
She's kind of mixed. She's Cherokee and she's from New Orleans, and so I think she can touch things that I can't.
Hmm.
I think because when I was over in Cherokee doing research for some of the thing over there, because I work over there, so I went ahead and talked to the people over there.
Of course.
And some of the people actually told me about the little people over there in Cherokee,
Oh, that's
and
where
they
I was
actually
going with the
supposedly found
fairies.
people.
You got to tell me. You got to tell me because Dell will be watching this part because he's fascinated with them. That's where I was going. So I got to. You just said the perfect thing. I'll stop. I got to hear this. This is amazing.
Okay, well, Little People was part of the Cherokee legends.
Hmm. And up
It's
here
in the
too.
first book.
Hmm.
Yep. Well, they're in different areas. They've got Little People in Hawaii
Hmm.
that they talk about. The Native Hawaiians talk about over there,
Yeah.
and that's also in the book too, I think.
Hmm.
But the Little People here in Cherokee, the Cherokee Indians believe that there are different types of little people,
Hmm.
and they have little tunnels on the ground they run through, and they can either be good or
Yeah.
mischievous,
Yeah.
or there's different varieties of them.
Yeah.
And when they were doing some grading over at Cherokee for one of the buildings, supposedly, I was told by an elder over there that they found bones of a little person.
Well, I've seen bones of little people before. Like we're talking
The
this
little,
big.
yeah,
Hmm.
they found the bones of them
Hmm.
in some of the tunnels. And
Wow.
I wrote about that in the book. There's a lady who did a complete book about nothing but the little people in the Cherokee legends.
Hmm.
I can't remember what her name is right now, but she did an
Well,
excellent job. And she
well,
had talked to
Dell.
some of the same people I talked to.
Okay, well, Dell is oh, we got Michelle over here. Hi, Michelle. Glad to see you here. She's from Australia. So glad to have you here.
Hello.
No, Dell has tomorrow night coming back on from YouTube. He calls him Q because his name starts with Q, but he's from Inuit, Alaska. And they talked about this the last time. Actually, Dell is Métis, which is part First Nations and another nationality. So that's where I was going with. I never thought I'd have a conversation about fairies. But do you ever watch Nuke's Top 5?
Not anymore. I quit watching. It's depressing.
No, not the news. Nuke's Top 5,
Oh,
it's called. I'm going to send you that channel. You
no, I
see what?
understand that. Okay.
Okay. The reason why is he's a bit of a skeptic, and people send in video footage of the paranormal that they have captured. He will try to debunk it. He will tell you if he's tried to debunk it. He never tells you what to think. His catchphrase is, what is this? Is it all an elaborate hoax? You decide. He has video from up here in Canada. Somebody sent him from one of the reserves in Alberta of little people. They're popping out, and when the person turns
Ah,
on the flashlight, it's nighttime. They turn it back on, you just get a glimpse, and they're just little people hiding behind a bush, and you can see it.
oh, that's cool. That's
He
cool.
has the creepiest stuff. I still to this day, and there's some people he will feature quite a bit, and it's from all over the world. He's in Norway. I believe it's Norway, yes, but he's got to be North American. He sounds like it. He doesn't have an accent. This has always freaked me out. In Mexico, maybe you'll know what this is writing your books. Maybe you've run across this. This gentleman owns like a party store, and there's all kinds of stuff that is going on that he has caught with his security cameras, and he's got security that'll go off if anything moves. He has this video footage. It has to do with this pinata doll. There's a whole story with it. He actually gets in a car accident going to retrieve it after he tried to get rid of it. And just before he crashes, because he's talking on his phone, you see the image of something in his back seat. But the first video he kept, oh, I'm getting goosebumps even talking about this. It is in a pile of toys, like pinata thing. I've never seen anything like this before, George. This thing pops up. It looks like a skull, and it's got black eyes, but it's got like this hair popping up, and it turns and it grins so eerily at the camera, and it turns its head, and then it turns its head, and he's got other video footage of catching this thing. Nobody knows what it is or why this is happening. He's had like crazy paranormal activity. You ever heard
Sounds like
anything
my ex-wife.
like that? Well, that's the thing I want to ask you. You said you talked about, various legends from other different countries, a few. But have you
Hmm.
noticed this as well? That depending on where you are, like with the Middle East, they'll call it a jinn. And
Hmm.
again, I go back to Nuke's Top 5 because people have sent in and caught on camera these black beings, and they're not afraid. Like, they're throwing stuff. There's one where a fire starts, like he picks up this piece of paper and he's about to open it, and a fire starts. And like I said, it sounds crazy. It sounds like special effects, but when you see this, and you'll see the people's reactions in these videos and stuff, or like in South America, there's this crazy thing here in Mexico. There's other places, there's crazy stuff. Yet, First Nations people have like different beings, or like, Celtic things. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Hmm.
Why they're all so different?
I don't know. It's that's. I think there's just so much out there, and there's so many. We're having unlimited parallel worlds.
Hmm.
It's Einstein talked about parallel worlds,
Yeah.
and it's unlimited. So if something can cross the planes of each world, it'd be different because it's a different type of area. Each parallel universe is.
Hmm.
So if it crossed time and space and those parallel uh, walls, then it's going to me, we're the hub. The
Right.
Earth is nothing more than a hub for all this to happen.
I'm
That's
I
why we have all the different flying saucers.
hmm you know what? I just don't know. Or is it something more along the lines of a tulpa, right? You get a collective belief. Everything is energy on the planet, including thought, because you'll hear things like the New Jersey
Hmm.
Devil or the Chupacabra or whatever, right? Like, why is it only in certain areas? I've often wondered that and wanted to know why. Maybe I'll never know.
Well, if you study it like the chupacabra,
Mm-hmm.
the chupacabra is it's in Arizona, it's in
Mm-hmm.
uh, Mexico, different places in South America, Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
and different areas. So I don't think that it's necessarily restricted to one area. The Jersey Devil is there because if you read the story about the Jersey Devil, it was the 13th child born to this woman, and they cast it out as the devil child.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's stuck there. I don't think it's out leave. Now, the Mothman, for example, the Mothman
Yeah.
has been seen all everywhere.
Yeah.
It's been most famously seen in West Virginia, but it's also been seen in Chicago lately. It's been
Mm-hmm.
seen. If you look at the Blackbird of Chernobyl, it is actually the same thing as the Mothman. If you read the
Oh, really?
description of the Blackbird of Chernobyl, yep.
Wow. Or the
And it
Thunderbird.
showed up right before Chernobyl went. Well, the Thunderbird, I think, is actually a real flesh and blood creature. I think the Mothman's more of a herald sent to us to say, look, something bad's going to happen here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I think the Thunderbirds, I think they're from the descriptions I've read about the Thunderbirds and the stories I've checked out and
Yeah.
researched. The Thunderbirds look like leftover birds from a past time.
Okay. Well, you know what my
I mean,
theory is, though, George, is that all these things that have existed through time, like we've talked about giants or werewolves
mhm.
or trolls or gnomes or vampires or whatever you want to call it, I always say there has to be a little bit of truth to it somehow, some way, that it existed before to be passed down from generation to generation and still exists today.
Oh
What's your
yeah,
thought? Yeah.
I agree with that 100%. I really do. Behind every legend is a hint of truth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anybody that has looked into any of this stuff, if
Mm-hmm.
you read down to the core of the the legend itself, you're going to find some truth there.
Mm-hmm.
And like the Indian, I call them Indians because that's what I've always called them. But you can say Native Americans, even though they're not actually native to this country.
Okay.
Uh, if you look into the deep into theirs, everything that they wrote their stories on is based off of something that they saw, something that they heard, or something that they were told by an elder that had seen it. And the funny thing is, when I'm doing my research for my book, anything that's done by you know everybody else except for the Indians or the native tribes, there's variations to it. But on the tribes stories, there's no variation.
I
The
know.
original story is the same as what you're hearing written now, and there's no variation. It's always concentric.
Mm-hmm.
But stories like Lizard Man down in South Carolina or the Dog Man up in Michigan,
You read my
there's
mind. I was going to
variation.
ask you about the dog man next. So let's talk. Well, let's hear about the lizard man first, please. I would love to hear what you found out. And then the dog man, because I have some questions. I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, the Lizard Man down in South Carolina was first seen by a young black guy. He was on his way home from work, and he went through the swamp. This thing come out of the swamp and chased him,
And what?
and he accelerated, and it chased him, would come
Okay.
after his car, and the whole story it's in one of my books. It's in the first book,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, it goes into detail. He talks about it and gives the description about it. If you look at the description he gives, it
Mm-hmm.
is the same creature as the reptilian from the alien race.
Ooh, interesting. Interesting. Okay, you were reading my mind there because I was going to ask you, okay, what's with this dog man? All of a sudden we are hearing about it. There's a few videos of it. Like it just seemed to come out of nowhere. What's your thoughts about that? Or what have you found out with your research?
Well, the history of the dogman goes back for quite a ways,
Mm-hmm.
and it
There was a
actually started.
there was a race of
Huh?
humans or beings apparently on Earth with actually dog-like features. I've heard about that.
Well, look at the Egyptians. The Egyptians have that.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at Anubis,
Yep.
Anubis is a human with a dog's head.
Mm-hmm.
And the dogman stories in America started back, long, long time ago, just like everything else did. But now they used to be located mostly in Michigan.
Right.
You never really heard about any dogman sightings
Mm-hmm.
except in certain areas in Michigan. Now they're everywhere. There's
Yep.
sightings here in Asheville, North Carolina, of the dogman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've seen a friend of mine sent me a picture he took over by one of the lakes that's not
Ooh.
10 miles from my house.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dog print. It's like
Okay.
this big.
Mm-hmm.
So it's bigger than like a mastiff, but there's only two of them in the mud where there should be four.
Wow. Want to hear a crazy story?
Sure.
When I, when I was in my old house, now Dell experienced something different. I'll share both of them with you. But I was talking to a friend in California, and it was about 3 o'clock, probably about 2 o'clock in the morning, my time. And you know how girls talk. I just colored my hair, and she's like, "Oh, I just love that color of your hair. What color is that?" And I said, "Oh, it's right outside in the garbage can, the box." So I go outside. I kid you not, right across the street, not more than 10, 12 feet away, there is this completely illuminated, silvery white, looked like a wolf, had to be 10, 11 feet tall, long, just the body, not the tail, and at the shoulder, at least 6 to 7 feet. This thing is huge, and it's just walking along. It sees me, turns its head, eyes glowing blue, and I'm mesmerized by this. I'm even turning my phone around, going to my, can you see this? Can you see this? And she's going, you need to get back in the house. You need to get back in the house now. And I'm going, but why? This is so amazing. Get in the house. I said, no, I just want to watch it. Just crossing the street. So it just goes over across the street. There's a telephone pole. As it walks by, it disappears. And she's screaming at me to get in the house. Okay. So I get in the house. I said, okay, as I come in, my oldest son is still awake. He goes, Mom, what was outside there? He goes, all I could hear was growling. And she's going, so was I. All I was hearing was growling, and it did not sound good. I could not hear this. I could just see this. She could not see it. And then Dell on her, because we used to have security cameras out the front of the house, and they stopped recording. We could never figure out why they would not record. We had the repair guy over. There's nothing wrong with it, but we could still see stuff. There was a black, almost similar to this, completely black he saw with red eyes. Where'd they come from?
That's pretty wild. That's pretty wild.
We weren't on drugs.
I don't know. These things are popping up everywhere now all of a sudden. I mean, they were, like I said, it was real restrictive where that you've seen dogman sightings, but then over the last few years, this just went crazy.
I know.
I
I
don't know
don't
if
know.
they're multiplying that fast or what.
Or what do you think they are? Like, we've got the legend of the werewolf. Do you think it's a variation of the werewolf or another dimension? Or
I've been trying to figure that out. I don't know. I don't think it's a werewolf. I think it's a creature that stays that way all the time.
mm-hmm.
But if it was a werewolf, you'd never be able to find it. I mean, you'd never be able to find it because during the day it'll be human. But
Yeah,
these things are being saw during the day, so they can't be, according to the old werewolf curse, they can't be
yeah,
werewolves, because they
without the
don't
full
change from
moon.
human to right. I mean, and these things are being saw in daylight. They're being saw. They're being seen. I can't learn to talk here. They're
Mm-hmm.
being seen at different places and different points of the day at night.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Maybe it's a alien species we don't know about coming in from either outer space or a dimensional portal. Who knows? I mean,
I don't know. So now I got to ask you about UFOs, because you mentioned you've had some UFO and ET experiences. I knew I'm going to end up having you back on here because this is right up my alley. I love talking about this stuff. I want to say hi to Anthony. Go ahead.
Okay. I've actually only had one UFO encounter.
Okay.
And it was right dead in the center of the Atlantic Ocean. There was nothing else anywhere around, nothing on radar, nothing on sonar, nothing. I mean, we was out, and the water was just as clear. It's a beautiful night, and when you're on the deck of the ship, you can see 10 miles
Okay.
onto the horizon, right?
Right.
Well, it was out probably, I would say, 7 to 8 miles away. All you could see
Okay.
was a light, and that light turned into different color lights, like in a circle. And this
Okay.
thing would go back and forth over the water like it was searching for something, just back and
Okay.
forth. I mean, we watched it for 5 minutes, back
Did
and
it show up
forth,
on?
back and forth. Never showed up on radar, never showed up on sonar, or nothing.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, it was back and forth, and it stopped, and it shot straight up in the air, faster than you could blink, and
Wow.
disappeared.
That is incredible.
It was an amazing sight. It really was. Like I said, we watched it for 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
so it wasn't like it was a just something that happened real quick. We sat there and watched it. And we was talking back and forth. Me and the front lookout and the O3 lookout. All three of us seen it, and we were just talking back and forth. It was about probably 3 o'clock in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and we just sat there and watched it and talked back and forth, and it just did this little thing like it was searching, and all of a sudden, poop!
Must have found what it was looking for.
It must have.
What do you think is in Antarctic? Like all this stuff we hear about this. I've had a guest who was in the Navy during Vietnam War, and they actually are one of 20 expert witnesses that testified. I believe it was before Congress. It was the New York Press Club. I remember the date, 2002, May 6th, and it was supposed to be a worldwide event because these guys all came with evidence, signed affidavits, and it was made a joke of in the media, like, oh, some people believe that ETs and UFOs exist. But these guys all talked about it, and he witnessed that when he was in the Navy in the Antarctic about something flying right up UFO, like a saucer, I believe, out of the Antarctic
Mhm.
Ocean. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I have no doubt there's a base up there.
Mhm.
Uh, there has been. I'm trying to remember what the name of the guy was who actually did the expedition up there and found the cave
General,
with.
I know who you're talking about. I
Yeah,
bet you Inner Peace will probably tell me. She's on here, Inner Peace Healing. I want to give a shout out too. I didn't see Lockbeard here. Welcome, Lockbeard, too. We're glad to have you guys all here. She did want to add something, if that's okay, George. Inner Peace Healing says, I was
sure.
saying that when a UFO rips the timeline, that's when we see cryptos, Dogman, and Bigfoot that don't exist on our timeline. Just a thought.
I
Interesting.
could. Anything's possible. It
Mm-hmm.
really is.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that don't believe that anything's possible has never looked.
Or experienced it.
Right. If
Mm-hmm.
you look hard enough, you'll experience something. If you get
Uh,
involved in this stuff, you're going to, whether it be the cryptozoological stuff or it be UFOs or it be anything, once get into this situation, you're
mm-hmm.
going to experience something that you've never experienced before, something you won't be able to explain.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to get out and do it. That's what the whole thing is. People need to open their eyes and get out and do it. That's
And
what it
look
means.
up. A lot of people don't look up or notice their surroundings around them. Like we
Exactly.
talk about this, Seraphine and I, when we've done shows, is, I always laugh when people say, well, the veil is the thinnest. All activity happens at 3 a.m. It's freaking 3 a.m. somewhere in the world, always. Second of all, the other part that we say is people have a false sense of security because it's daylight. They do,
Yeah,
right?
I agree. I agree. I do. And
Lots happen.
people live in a bubble. And
Mm-hmm.
if it's outside that bubble, even if they see it, if they don't believe it, they're not going to see it
Yeah.
with their eyes. They might see it with their mind, and it might sit in the back of their head for a while, but
Mm-hmm.
it's never going to come forward until they bust that bubble.
You
And
are
I
so.
don't I don't even have a bubble anymore. My
No,
bubble
you know
burst.
what? I used to say, think outside the box. How about we just realize that there is no box,
Yep,
right?
exactly. I agree.
Mhm.
As long as you let your mind let you be restricted, then you're never going to see any of this stuff.
That's
You're
true.
always going to pass it off as something else. You're going to, oh, that's just smoke. That's just, you know,
Mhm.
I've never seen smoke turn its head and look at me. So,
I have a picture of, oh, wait, Michelle, I have a picture actually of smoke from my old house that our furnace always used to stop working right at the coldest point in winter. They could never figure out. And we had this young guy come down to fix it, and he went in the furnace is in the most active part of our old house. So I said to Dell, I guess I'll go sit with him and just sort of keep an eye out just in case. So I'm chit chatting. He's probably thinking this old lady's trying to pick him up because he's good looking 20, mid to late 20s, and I'm just jibber jabbering away, right? But then, and I have a picture, you can see him bent over, and I thought my eyes were playing tricks. It turned, oh, getting goosebumps. It was black, and then it just crept and crept and crept, and I took 3 pictures, and the fourth one it was gone.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but I didn't. You should see some of the pictures I have. We have bites. And we used to call this thing, excuse the term, ass monster, because it seemed to like a butts for some reason. I remember Del up, and he has bruises on his. I'll send you pictures of all this. He has bruises on
Okay.
his arms, and he goes, I didn't have that before bed. I go, no, you didn't. And I said, what were you dreaming about? Because I know because he has abilities too, and he has very vivid dreams. He goes, I don't know, I was fighting something. I said, you better strip because I got to see what else is on you. I kid you not. It's not obscene, but it's really high up right here. There's a bite, and it looks like something with pointed, jagged teeth. It is not a human bite. And I have a
Yeah.
burn on my tailbone that looks like somebody took a cigar and went, and no idea how it got there. Hmm.
I have, well, not as much as I used to. I've always had nightmares since I
Oh,
was like 12.
hmm.
I busted my head open. I still got the scar, but I
Hmm.
busted my head open on a rock. And ever
Right.
since then, I've had nightmares every night. And they told me, I don't know, but they told me they could see if I was having a nightmare and say something was clawing at me, they
Hmm.
could actually watch the things come up on my arm,
Who was this thing?
red marks come up on my arms. We did, we, we, we were talking about it on a ship one night, so they wanted to test it.
Hmm.
So they sat there and they watched. After I crashed, they come in and was watching, and they said they could see marks across my face. They could see marks pop up on my arms. Uh, I was
Wow.
speaking some kind of weird language. I didn't know what it was. All kinds of stuff. I have some interesting situations.
And you say you don't have any paranormal experiences too much. Nothing really negative. I would call that
Well,
negative.
that was just dreams, I guess. I don't really figure it's paranormal. I think it's all in my head. Of course, with this
Well,
head, you
yeah, it
kind
was
of got
all
to
in your
watch
head,
what
then it
comes out of
manifested on your face and your arms. And
it.
I mean, I guess you could maybe have telekinesis or something, but still, I mean, that's pretty. That's
Everybody
pretty.
tells me I'm just crazy, so you know.
No, if they watched you and they've seen that, and then especially if you remembered your dream, because a lot of people don't realize that when we dream, and I believe this wholeheartedly, that we actually astral travel. We do. Or like the dream that I had with that, what I shared with you, that was a lucid dream. I remember that like that happened 20 minutes ago, every
Oh
detail of
yeah,
it. So,
I dream in sequence, I
okay.
dream in color, and I die in my dreams sometimes.
I'm so glad, not that I want you to, that you died in your dreams, but I just had a
Well, thanks, I
conversation.
appreciate that.
No, I just had this conversation with Dell because it was something that was said on our paranormal show that you can't prove. Another time I'll bring it up, but I said it's kind of the same theory that you hear people say that if you die in your dreams, you die in real life. Well, first of all, here's an example. Second of all, how do you prove it? Yeah, I had a dream that I died and I died. So how did anybody else find out that you died because you were dreaming about dying?
Well, the theory behind it is that it would cause such a shock to your system that you would have a heart attack and die.
Mm-hmm.
That's
You
what the theory is.
you must
I
have
don't
had
believe
some
it.
you must have had some interesting past lives. Like, how do you know that you're not going back to that type of energy, or like, or maybe to those past lives?
I don't know. I really
You
don't.
said you spoke a language that you don't know how to speak. Like, how do we know that that's not right?
Well, I was drinking back then, so it could have been drunkenese. So,
Yeah, and the alcohol scratched you because you drank too much, right? Right? Are you
you just never know with me. So,
Del's in here now. He's coming. He must be watching our show. He's coming to join the conversation. This is
oh,
George.
cool.
This is
Hey,
Del.
how you doing?
He knows about the little people. You want to ask him? Because I was going to show it
Oh
to you.
no, it's just I just went in to ask her son there says if he, at midnight does he want to come out because I got some fireworks that I just brought back from camp for my birthday at midnight. So
Oh, so you're telling everybody, yes, it's Del's birthday at midnight. He has a big party.
Happy birthday.
Having a party on his show.
Yeah.
He was telling, George has written many books about
Okay.
legend, lore, monsters. You
Okay.
give him the title.
Legends, myths, monsters, and ghosts.
There you go.
Oh,
so
awesome.
he wrote. I was just going to ask him. He brought up about the little people. So if you got any
Okay.
questions, ask him.
Okay, this is actually good because the person I'm having on my show there tomorrow, Q, he's from Nome, Alaska, and from the reserve, native person. And this is one thing that I've found is that when I've been talking to a lot of native people recently in the last 4 or 5 years, I asked about Bigfoot. They don't talk about Bigfoot or the hairy man out there. They talk about the little people in the bush. And this is the fun. I'm
Métis. He knows
Métis.
that,
My grandmother was Cree from Alberta, and I never really got to talk to her very much about this at all because when she grew up, she was taken from the reserve, put in that whole Canada stuff where they took away them, and she went off to a school, adopted outright. There's this whole assimilation of
he
native
understands because his wife is Cherokee and from New Orleans.
Okay, yeah. So, but anyways, is that the thing is though is that I never got to really talk to her about this stuff, and she actually didn't get to really learn a lot about this because she was taken so early. But the thing is though is that all the not all, a lot of the native people that I've talked to, and I've traveled a lot through Canada, is that they never really talk about Bigfoot. They talk about these little people, and that's what they're most afraid
See
of.
what he's got to tell you, because I'll explain to you after the show, because we don't have to. We're almost out of time. This went by so quick. Go ahead, George.
Well, the little people I did research on were, there's different groups of little people in different places, like in Hawaii, other places like that. But the ones I talked about were the Cherokee. The Cherokee have legends about little people, and the little people are not all the same. There's good ones, there's mischievous ones, there's bad ones.
Yeah.
And when I was doing the research on this, I talked to the people out in Cherokee, talked to some of the elders, and they were telling me when they did some excavation out there, they actually found bones of some of the little people.
Yeah.
And the
in
tunnels.
Yeah.
So is that what Q said, that they traveled by tunnel?
Well, the story said in Alaska is, and this might be just a tribe of little people that are up there, they have long, sharp claws, pointy teeth, ears, and I described them like a gremlin to them, like gremlins, and that's what they sort of look up there. But then we talked to Varla Ventura.
I told him about that.
And there's in other cultures, and I've looked at this for about 4 years about this, and they're all sort of a different thing that comes around. Mischievous, they take things. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. But a lot of times in Canada, up here, around Ontario and going out towards the west and up northwest territories, they are very mischievous. If you go there, they take away time from you.
Well, ask him what he's found.
A lot of
things. Did you run into that at all with the Cherokee legend at all, George?
No, most of the Cherokee ones, I talked about the little people, they were usually helpful to children. They were if children got lost and stuff, they helped them get back home,
Oh,
or
beautiful.
they were mischievous. They would play tricks on the
Mhm.
warriors and stuff and the women and stuff at the campfires.
Yeah. Did you hear a thing
They would
about
do-
don't whistle in the woods?
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, did you
I've
hear?
heard about that, but I don't know a whole lot about it.
Yeah, that's a story that I found from about 5 or 6 different reserves across Canada. Is that through passed down ancestral lore and stuff like that? Is that you do not whistle in the woods. If you see something that's small, you run away, and if it follows you back, go back out, leave food out there. Hopefully, because they play tricks at your house and disrupt your house.
No, but what happens if you whistle again? I forget what that was.
Well, if you whistle in the woods, as you disrupt what they're doing and they follow you in, right? It causes the tension there because usually they're doing their own song. And that's 2 or 3 different tales that I've heard like that. But it's really
No, but that's
interesting.
interesting that you didn't hear that with the Cherokee legend, though, right?
Yeah, theirs is a lot different than that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
but
Because you end up having it says they end up having a lot of things is when because I worked in the bush a long time prospecting, and you make a lot of noise in the bush to keep away the bears as you're because you don't want to walk up on an animal when you're working, and this sort of goes against that part is you want to make
As
you
little
don't want to
noise as
disturb,
possible.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you
Yep.
disturb,
now thinking about the little people, I was sitting here thinking as you was talking about that, it makes me think of leprechauns.
Yes.
well,
Yes.
similar stories, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we didn't even get into
Yeah.
trolls and dwarves. You got to come back, George. We're almost out of time. I'll let you go get your fireworks ready, or
Yeah.
he'll stay up here and chat your ear off. He'll probably want to have you on your show.
Hey, that's
I thought you were done. I was gonna say
No, I'm not done yet. We're having a great chat here. He always says this, and then he meets my guests, and then he scoops them.
I'll come back anytime. I love it.
I was so glad to have you on here, and I want to thank everyone. It goes by quick, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
No, you are a wealth of knowledge. I've loved having you on here, and I'm going to send you some of that paranormal stuff we've got. There's stuff I've released to the public. So,
Cool.
So, where can people find you? Where can they buy your books? Where can they hear your podcast and everything about you that you want to share?
I'm redoing my podcast. I'm dropping my podcast. I'm starting a new one. The new podcast is going to be called Odd and Unusual Tales. And it will cover everything from the cryptozoology to UFOs to serial killers to weird facts about history. It's going to have all kinds of wild, weird stuff on it. It's going to cover everything.
Sounds amazing.
And everything will be on my website.
Okay.
And you go to my website's called, author George Lunsford.x10host.com.
You sent me that address, right?
Yes.
So what I'll do, everybody, I always do a banner up for the show. It's on all my social media profiles. The link will be there so you can click it and get to your website. Go ahead. You can tell whatever else you want to share.
That's it. I'd be glad to answer questions. I'll feedback. If you go to my website, there's links on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, everything for my books. And as soon as the next book I get a release date, I'll have it on my website. I'll have it on my Facebook page. You can go to my Facebook page or Instagram or what else? MeWe or Tubular is all on my website too.
Well, that is awesome.
Hopefully there's going to be some of my old videos to be on there too.
Oh, I can't wait. I'll check them out. I want to thank everybody in the chat room tonight. We had Michelle Pratt, we had Inner Peace Healing, otherwise known as Shady D. I know she uses different profiles. We had a Lockbeard here tonight. We had a few people. We get different people from time to time on here, and they ask great questions. Like I said, Michelle's from Australia. I know Inner Peace Healing's from Canada. Not sure where Lockbeard is from. That's one of the first times I've seen them here before. But I want to thank thank everybody for tuning in. If you ever want to get a hold of me to book a reading or a crystal Reiki session, you can get a hold of me on facebook.com/The Angel Rock. I have 2 groups on Facebook, Paranormal University for all things paranormal, and the Angel Rocker Tribe for more of the esoteric energy, healing, power of positivity, power of the mind, and things like that. And I want to thank you guys all so much for being here. I want to wish my fellow Canadians a happy May long weekend. It's the last day today. And to all my fellow US friends out there, I want to wish you a happy and safe Memorial Day weekend next weekend. Night, everybody. We'll see you soon. Much love. You just got to wait.